So welcome everyone. I'm Chris Yanchar. I am Senior Director of the Building Design Product Group here at Autodesk. And it's super exciting to be able to host this meeting in a hybrid format. So it's exciting to see everybody in person. I think excited to see what we all foster over the next day and a half. I think we all realize that open standards, open data is super important for our customers. For the pandemic, we're seeing more complex projects, bigger requirements on customers. Know that they don't use just one vendor for the entire life cycle of the project. So interoperability, open standards, automation is super important. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say. I'm excited to, like I said, excited to see the next days go, and over to
you. Thank you for hosting us. It's really a pleasure. So, would you screen share? So, my name is Léon van Berlo. I'm a Technical Director of buildingSMART International. I also want to do a quick introduction of what this is, what this meeting is. Really weird, by the way, to have this wide spectrum. Maybe I'll stand in the corner later on. So General Assembly is really a technical implementers meeting. I do have to start with this code of conduct. As you are all aware that buildingSMART is a not-for-profit. We're really open to all contributions, non-discriminatory. So all of these sessions will be recorded. As you noted, all of the recordings will be published by Dan, who is doing a wonderful job at that every time. It will be on the main website, and you will find a link in the form as well. But since all of you are registered, you will get an email on this as well. So I just want to do a quick intro on what is this General Assembly of Implementers, because many of you have known this meeting as the Implement Support Group, the ISG. Has a lot of ISG meetings historically as well. I think my first one was January 2006 in Berlin, which was a really wonderful meeting. It's really where all the tech people come together and talk about all the problems that still need to be solved. It's been wonderful 2 days. But back then it was basically just IFC, and that already gave a lot of problems. By now we have a lot of other standards and initiatives going on as well. So we have this use case management that you probably heard of. We have multiple versions of IFC, VCF, different API developments. We've got translations of IFC going on in different chapters as well. We've got this new IDF development, BSD, and these are only kind of the big topics that we have. So these are all over the year kind of independent development teams that meet every week, every 2 weeks, discuss several topics, and really doing a great job. But we do see that there's kind of overlap between a couple of topics as well. I remember that with PASI we had a lot of discussions on units in IDS, but those discussions are always also coming back in other projects. Use cases from real, Andreas is here as well, just pointing randomly at people that I've seen. So, use cases from real are coming back in IFC developments, but also in how do you leverage BSD, how can we publish and share those in UCM, etc., etc. So this integration of the different developments is really a core topic. So that's why we do the General Assembly. All of these different groups, these different initiatives come together. Some of these presentations will be a relatively boring update. Some of them will be very interactive, where you can shout and complain, and we try to solve the actual issues as well. So it's kind of it's all over the place. Agenda for today. So we're doing opening sessions and some overview of the technical ecosystem. I hope this won't take 2 hours, so probably can do some additional coffee breaks and introductions as well. I think that's good. As you see, I've got 32 slides trying to give you full overview of the status of everything, trying to link it to the agenda as well. This will only raise questions. There's no intention here to solve all of your questions and give all of the answers. It will only raise more questions, but hopefully during the next 2 days we'll answer those. So after that we got API developments and IFC5. So I think API developments, looking at Basti, will be relatively updating everyone about the status. IFC5 is probably the most interactive, one of the most interactive sessions. Where's Greg? That's Greg. Up in the corner doing his homework. One of the most interactive sessions, updating about ideas and current status. And also got some really nice input from other vendors who have ideas on that. So. Then after lunch, we have the Implementers Forum, IFC4.x Implementers Forum. So, this is really kind of the main topic that we're used to with the Implementers Support groups. All of us coming together and trying to fine-tune and further implementers IFC versions. That's also going to be very interactive. The Vandro will be leading that. Vandro is the leader of the Implementers Forum for Autodesk. Getting some status updates on the ISO process. I've got a very annoying cough, by the way. The ones who were at the welcome drinks yesterday already noticed. This is going to annoy you for the next 2 days. I'm very sorry. And then after the break again, we're going to. This is still Implementers Forum. We're going to look at some business cases. Tomorrow is the IDS VSDD, trying to do that interactive. This is a little bit of an open part as well. We're not sure how many people here are interested in these, are actively developing. Are you interested in what it is and how it can be leveraged? Are you interested in how to connect to the API? Are you interested in publishing data? So, yeah, just let us know what kind of questions you have up front. We'll try to fine-tune and tweak that session. So at the moment, we've got a couple of slides and a couple of Swagger help pages for you to show, but if you see questions, let us know so we can. And same on IDS. Sarah and Robin will do one of those boring status updates, but Dion is also coming. Dion Molt, so that's to be confirmed. He confirmed this morning. He's going to run us through a couple of unit tests as well. Then after lunch, we have open house with a really nice presentation from Dassault. Where is the Dassault? Nice. Actually, I expect you to contribute to a couple of the other topics today as well. There's a lot of overlap. We have Bernard, and if anyone else wants to take it. And then, of course, we have the tour of this building, which I'm also very much looking forward to. So, since there's 150 online registrants, I noticed that not everyone is online yet, but just want to lay out a couple of ground rules. I think this is not too long, makes sense. There's a lot of heated discussions. We are an open community, so it kind of stimulates a lot of different opinions that can be voiced rather loud sometimes, but with 150 people online, that really doesn't work. In principle, these meetings were always in person. I still consider this an in-person meeting. So I know Greg is going to do something very interactive as well. So online is something that is like is a bonus, is a plus. It's nice. Unfortunately, online people won't be as engaged probably. So let that be an encouragement for. All right. Then an open call as well for the next meeting. So these meetings are twice a year, usually a couple of weeks before the summit. They are face to face. We're very lucky to have Autodesk host this. I think it was in the pipeline for 3 years already. Finally here. It's above all expectations. So very much. But the next meeting is already in January, February. So if any of the vendors wants to host, we used to have this rhythm where vendors would host one by one. I think Jeffrey even has an opinion on whose turn it is in February. So yeah, I don't want to pressure people too much, but if anyone wants to host the next session, the next version, please let us know. Again, thank you. It's really a wonderful. So, before I dive into these workflows and trying to explain how things are connected, and again, it would probably only raise more questions than answers. This will take 20 minutes, half an hour, so we really do have a lot of time for the first break. I would maybe pause here a bit and start with some introductions. As in-person meeting already. So maybe just a quick round of who you are, what company you work for, where you're from, and what's the main topic you want to. Neil, can I start with you?
Yeah, sure. Neil Peterson. I'm the president of Open Design Alliance, based in Melbourne, Florida. We have a set of IFC tools, so I'm interested in everything, I guess, today. So.
John Merchant, Geometry Gym, software engineer and structural engineer, develop a lot of plugins for interoperability for lots of software used by architects, engineers and contractors. So yeah, using IFC in particular a lot to achieve that interoperability. From Australia, Melbourne. Yeah, the Melbourne.
Pedro Diaz-Cotero. I'm with Data Systems based in Amsterdam, but working with a worldwide team. I'm very excited to see the latest in IFC because it's important for us and our interoperability strategy and to contribute to the openness of our platform. And yeah, I'll be talking to you guys about what we actually want to cover tomorrow, so I'll keep that for tomorrow.
Everyone, my name is Brigitte Ferreira. I work for a company called Exponent, and I'm based out of Boston. We do construction consulting. I'm very interested in general about the challenges of implementation. Here to learn more about.
Hi, well, I'm Justin. I'm working with Microdesk, Director of Digital Transformation, working with Autodesk, working with IBM, and all of our partners to build out the digital twin for our clients.
Hi, my name is Derek Gu. I work for IBM, and we have a suite of products that like some early integrations of the digital twins. What I'm hoping that I can learn from the group and also help the group to adopt some of those as standard into our products. And I live in Western part of Massachusetts.
Good morning. My name is Andreas Pinzenöhler. I'm coming from Austria, Vienna, and I was member of technical services of the IFC Rail extension project for the and today I'm here to give you some information about the ongoing IFC Rail project trying to prepare IFC for the trade side in the market.
My name is Tony Chen. I work for Autodesk, and I come from Novi, Michigan, that's in Boston area. Our team is working for the translation framework. Autodesk has been supporting IFC for a long time, but our team is pretty new, so I'm interested in everything. And you guys.
I'm Pablo Margancher from Builders AI. We're a new startup in the space. I'm making a web-based collaboration and integrated development environment for BIM and CAD. We're open source on GitHub. Please, my associates, go with this.
Yep. I'm Juan. I'm formerly at CBRE. I'm helping Pablo out with some of this stuff. Visiting from New York.
Hi, my name is Amach Nalgali. I'm also a part of Builders. I'm a software engineer from Princeton, New Jersey.
Hi, everybody. Greg Schleusner, New York. I work for HOK in buildingSMART. I'm one of the co-chairs with Dennis Sheldon of the technical room. We're volunteer participants about that. That was it, right?
Good morning, everybody. Matt Arsenault. I'm product manager here at Autodesk, working on the Revit team focused on interoperability and IFC.
I'm Nigel Peters from the UK. I am product manager for the infrastructure development team at Autodesk. I have been a technical expert with buildingSMART for the last 7 years. I'm very actively involved in the last 2 years with the RC4X3 work, and I'm working with a lot of major civil engineering firms to test and validate that RC4X3 works their needs.
I'm Dennis Sheldon, the other technical room co-director, and I'm associate professor at Rensselaer Polytech in my daytime job. And, doing a lot of stuff around, data science and web services and micro. Very interested in sort of the version 5 possibilities for support.
Hi, Jeffrey Ouellette. A man of many hats, not just the black one. This time around, I am here as the technical chair for the buildingSMART USA chapter.
Hi, my name's Angel Velez. I am part of the Revit team. I'm the product owner of the team. And I've been also part of the technical room steering committee, and I've been going to the previous incarnation of these meetings for quite some time. So great to kind of catch up in person. Jester, I'm on, and
I'm Solitary. I'm mainly here today talking about the document safety.
I'm Christian. I'm a product manager on the BIM product at Procore. Also chair of the SPG working group within our US chapter, and excited to talk about and learn more about IFC, VCS, all of it. It's all good for Procore.
Hi, I'm Venkat Sankarat from Carpinteria, California. I work for Procore. I'm a software engineer. I'm interested to know more about IFC, the challenges faced by other developers.
Hi, my name is Xiaolong, and I work in the Autodesk, same as Tony and Tyler. I'm a software engineer, which is based in Boston, and our team mainly support the interoperability between different software and support the FC. I'm here to learn more about the FC, and also we use the support from the ODA, and I'm also interested to learn more about that.
Hi, good morning everyone. Evandro Altieri from Italy, based in the Netherlands. I recently joined buildingSMART in last May, so that's my first general assembly of implementers, but I was involved in the railway project for the last 4 years and a half, so I met some of you along the journey, and I'm probably going to discuss about the IFC for the 3, or for the X, I should say, Implementers Forum, which is the initiative that was conceived in rail, and now it's under buildingSMART to organize and speed up and support the implementation of for the 3, and in the future, whatever for the 4 standard will be.
Morning, I'm Dan Little from buildingSMART. I've been helping Leon for the past year or 2 to organize these meetings, and you probably would have all heard from me to help get you all here, and if you have any questions whilst you're here, I'm just helping make sure everyone's got everything they need and supporting Leon and Evandro.
Morning, everyone. My name is Calvin Park. I am a product manager for Maximo Assets. As I'm with Derek from IBM. We have a bit of an interesting integration through code. IFC is formatted into our product.
Hi, my name is Glenn. I'm a BIM data architect at Cobuilder, which is a Norwegian company, but I'm based in France. Because of the weather. I'm mostly interested in IDS and BSD, and even more about the connection between IDS and BSD, and the crucial part.
Hello, I'm Joël.
I'm from France, but based in Montreal. I work for Thomas Fugnet at ATD, the maintainer, creator and maintainer of IFC OpenShift, right IFC. And tomorrow I will talk about the...
You had to learn French all over again to live in Montreal.
What's coming to weather?
So, I'm Arkady Gilman, based in Boston, working for Autodesk. I'm software architect of Revit, and I'm here because I want to learn more about IFC approaches to taxonomies and classifications, because it's important.
So you're the software architect of Revit, and you want to learn about classification. It's wonderful that you're here. Really good.
I want to learn about IFC approach to quantum approach.
No, I think classification is the highest priority, actually.
Hi, I'm Derek DeHart. I'm from Vectorworks out of the Columbia office in Maryland. I lead our development teams that make use of IFC, and I'm here to learn about strategy.
I'm Micho, also from Vectorworks, and
And Scott Conover, one more Autodesk person in the room. I'm engineering director. My teams are responsible for things including API and interoperability, so I'm here to learn what Anil's talking about all the time.
All right, wonderful. I think the people outside are not part of our meeting, are they? No. Good. So yeah, let's move on. And again, this is an interactive session, so please stop me when I'm rambling on too much, or I'm happy to take intermediate questions as well on this. Let me check the time. All right. So workflows. Like I said, there's a lot of different initiatives, a lot of different services, standards, and somehow they're all connected, as Frederick already said. Things like IDS and BSD have a natural connection, but IFC and BSD as well, IDS. So it's all over the place, and I can understand it's often quite challenging. So what we've created is we had a very detailed workflow on how different processes work, step by step, what the components are, what the standards are, what the services are, which parts are still missing, where we need more vendor support, et cetera, et cetera. Thankfully, Evandro kind of made that a little bit more compact and readable. And I'm aware that this is not readable for you yet. So if it's too small, they're all published on Miro boards. This would be the moment where Dan shares the link. Should I be doing that? I guess are you guys all logged into the Zoom meeting? Yeah, I'll try to share. Looking at Dan again, find some way to share that link, and so we can watch along as well, and dive into more details. Zoom. So this is the one on how do you define requirements. So as a client or as a contractor or whatever. So defining requirements is in many places in the workflow. There's kind of 3 different ways to define requirements, but zooming in on the easiest one, got this single project option, where someone defines requirements in a computer interpretable way. This is where a standard like IDS comes in, and also BSD. If you want to do that multiple times, and you have when you're a big organization or a large client, you say our requirements are kind of repetitive. We have the same kind of classifications or the same kind of property sets, user-defined property sets every time, and we don't want to kind of constantly share those in files. We want to publish those somewhere and refer to it. That's where the BSD comes in. So BSD is where you can say, these are our extensions of IFC on classifications and properties. This is where you can find them. This is how they're related to other standards. You can make links to it. There's materials as well in there as well. But those are relatively static. You can update whenever you want, but they're intended to be relatively static. There are versions as well, getting a unique identifier. And then IDS is an XML-based file standard where you can say, well, this is what I need now for my project this week. To the BSDD parts, you can IFC as well, but you can also, for that week, just say, I need this property now, or I want to restrict the values of my publication in the BSDD. So that's a more dynamic way to define your requirements for a specific transaction. And BSDD is a more mature, stable way to publish your requirements in more generic. So if you define these project-specific computer interoperable requirements, you can kind of grab from the BSDD. There's a lot of standards published in the BSDD, a lot of classification standards. Classes in EGIM, a lot of national classification systems, but also a specific property set. End up with an IDS, an information delivery specification. That's what I need for this transaction, for this week, this month, this phase of my project, whatever. There is a way to validate that IDS to make sure that your requirements are specified in a valid way, so you don't specify a PSET that isn't there in that IFC version. So this is the smart service that is under development, but we also see a lot of other tools coming up with those validation services. And then you share those requirements. So you share that IFC file with your author. And that's where the next block comes in, authoring IFC data. IDS really specifies the information you need. You can specify entities, classes, properties, materials, attributes. It doesn't allow you to specify geometry types or level of geometry or those kind of things. So there's other initiatives going on as well. There's product data templates. There's level of information need, which is a SEN standard. If you're interested in how they all compare to each other, there's a really nice paper from Arthur Schonzak. Looking at Ivandro now, maybe can you set up and share it in the chat? That compares all of these different standards for defining information requirements. For us, from a buildingSMART perspective, currently IDS is the way to go, and it doesn't compete with the others. It's kind of the SEN standard, for example, really uses the same principles, but extends those with geometry requirements as well. So then we've defined requirements. I really want to make this a little bit more interactive, guys, so if you have any questions, so please. Yes, Greg.
Could you put in presentation mode?
Good question.
Just so it's slightly bigger?
Lower right-hand corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, you guys see your slides though, so.
I have presentation mode now as well, so.
You mentioned the paper, going to the chat. I'm on the Zoom and I don't see chat enabled. Am I missing? Okay.
Any other questions?
2 Q&As at the top.
I'll handle those, Leon.
Yeah, okay. So then we've defined requirements. So next step would be to author data. Again, I'm not sure if it's readable. So this is where the definition of requirements comes in. So you're receiving this IDS file. In the ideal situation, if you don't have that, then maybe there's other ways to do that. But in principle, this is where you maybe import files from other people that you're going to further edit, or in most cases these days with the reference view, you're going to create your own data and maybe use other files as a reference. She comes in, obviously, And this is also where these API standards could come in. The Documents API, which would follow after the coffee break, makes it very easy to just get the most recent IFC file from a project from an online CDE. Demos as well, right? That's going to be one of the demos. So this is, it's a little bit of a complex overview, but this tries to make a difference between are you creating your own data with other IFC files as a reference, or are you kind of doing the design transfer view idea where you import an IFC file, changes and export it. It leaves that open. I know in reality it's usually you just work on your own data. So you create your own files. You could use the D here as well, because when you have these requirements that says, well, you need to classify your solar panels according to the ETIM standards. Nobody knows the ETIM standard by heart, so there's a couple of really nice demos how to leverage the buildingSMART data dictionary, where you can connect to the B, search for solar panels. At the ETIM classes, you just say, assign them. Those are added, including all of the properties that ETIM finds connected to solar panels, fill in the values and export. So this is the main use case for BSD for end users. You need to kind of add and enrich your data with further classification systems or further standards. It makes it very, very easy, almost impossible to make mistakes or typing errors. We're going to see that demo as well, probably tomorrow, or when Frederick is too eager to show it, maybe even today. Otherwise, tomorrow we'll show that BSD as well. During this authoring stage, authors are being helped to classify and enrich and add the correct values for the correct properties in the correct place in a very easy way thanks to the BSD. So then we're coming to the file is ready, you export and you share it. So that's where IFC obviously comes in again, and also where the APIs can come in, where you say, okay, update this to this is going to be your demo, right? Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah, I just do the ideas and everything by before.
Yeah. But that's where the OpenCD API, Documents API comes in again. So there can also be another use case where you have an IFC file and you want to further enrich it, or you want to further add some properties to it, or so for example, you are the solar supplier and you're getting an IFC file with solar panels in there, but those are just proxies or whatever. And you want to enrich that with by classifying it according to the ETIM classification. So it's very similar to authoring, but you're just extending an existing file. So you're not really using an authoring tool. This is we've seen a couple of demos here that are doing this on a CDE, where a file in a CDE adds some property sets to it and then updates the version. So it's not exporting, opening in an authoring tool, and exporting again. So we can share this demo as well.
The screen share is not keeping up with the top. Maybe that you need to stop sharing and share. Yeah. There is a question as well from Ron. Are spatial containment requirement and other relationships supported in IDS?
Yes. Yes, that was a big discussion, actually. Talking to you now, since you're on the discussion. That was a big discussion, and only recently added to, I think we had this development version 0.6 or 0.7. It wasn't in there very nicely, so big discussions. I think Dion has contributed to that quite a bit as well, and I think in 0.9 they're in there quite nicely. So the answer is yes. There's a couple of examples quite recently, so urging everyone to have a look at that. Any other questions? Other questions?
So the idea in this use case is basically direct use of the IFC.
Yeah, in this use case, the idea is direct use of the IFC. Yeah, really. So the original use case here was a contractor that gave access on their CDE, on the latest versions of their IFC files, to fire consultants, fire engineers. So these guys don't have software tools that can import or export IFC. So they got access to the CDE and just opened the IFC file on the CDE and added properties to say, well, this is a wall that has a fire rating of 90 minutes. This door should have that. So you just add their data for, and they also were. This was on I think on a Trimble Connect, where they state owner of those property sets, but they were added to the release. So the idea here is the same. The only principle here is that adding the properties and adding the classes is not like free, just fill out whatever you want. You're getting basically templates from the BSBD to make sure that you, yeah.
Knowledge can be free for and as property.
It's as property. So there's also in the documentation a mapping table on how you should deal with the things in BSBD, how they should end up in IFC. So classification should be classification reference, property should be in a certain preset, or user-defined property sets, materials, and that's a little bit different also per IFC version. We also want you to add the unique identifiers, the URIs from the BSBD to the IFC file. That's documented in a massive table on how you should do an IFC file. I was going to ask the question, but it's a good point because if it's Trimble Connect, I know the answer. So I was going to ask is this modifying the IFC or is this actually just extending externally? One of the things I'll talk about is actually the Trimble Connect model is a entity component model where in Trimble you're actually not editing the IFC, you're just making the associated link to these P sets that are added. So it's a good sort of discussion topic as we look ahead is like, well, is that the right model, or actually cracking open the whole IFC file and trying to edit it directly versus putting data next to it that has a very strong link to the entities? Yeah, make sure we talk about it. Yeah, I think in Trimble Connect, that's indeed how they do it. There's also a video from Akka where they do open the file in the background, add properties, and then just write a completely new file again. So there's different approaches on how to support this case, but yeah, I think it's quite interesting.
In the way we discuss API is that the API doesn't concern that it stays into the IFC or it stays out. Like a class associate. And it does. How to implement.
Yep. All right. Does link sharing already work now? Yeah, and can you share a link from the Akka video from eTIM as well? I think that's really, really showing this use case quite nicely. Finish resharing your screen. Started doing it, then you got. Yeah. Okay. Okay, cool. So then we have an IFC file with some data in there, obviously, maybe enriched with the help of the BSBD. I say that explicitly with the help of the BSBD, so BSBD is not a standard, it hosts several standards. So the BSBD itself is a service that can help users to do, to extend and combine different standards in an effective way. I'm sorry. Nothing wrong with me, by the way. I mean, not on the coughing level.
So then you come to a point where you want to validate the data that's in the IFC file. So validation is on multiple levels. You can validate, is the file correct? Is the syntax correct? Can you actually open it? Is it according to the schema?
Recording in progress.
Is it according to the schema? Is the data that's in there, does that make sense? So what we're doing there, I think the first couple makes sense, right? So validate IFC data against the syntax and schema. You can validate, is this file according to the original IDS requirements? So this is where IDS comes in. Optionally, you can check this VSD part. I'll talk about that later. And then maybe you can validate IFC against even more other requirements. So the right part, buildingSMART is not doing. So we're not checking IFC against any other kind of requirements because that's out of our ecosystem at the moment. We don't have tools that are checking IFC against IDS. That is up to you guys. There's even explicit requests from a couple of you that don't want us to make tools for this. We do have a validation service that checks these two parts. So first, you can upload your IFC file to validate.buildingsmart.org. Don't check out, doesn't work yet. Where it checks syntax and schema, and it also checks a couple of other things. So kind of it tries to check implementers agreements, it tries to check does it make sense what you have in this file. There's a famous example, I think Real has a couple of examples on that. An alignment curve can be according to the schema correctly, but it can still be a curve that doesn't make sense in practice. So there's a couple of checks for that. We want to integrate that in the validation service as well. And we have this BSD check. So maybe this a little bit more explanation, but for example, inside the BSD, you can publish a standard. I know an example from the Netherlands that has an NLSFB classification standard, where NLSFB 2122 is a load-bearing outer wall. So everyone in the Netherlands knows that. 2122 is a load-bearing outer wall. So that means that when an object that is classified as 2122 needs to have a load-bearing property set to true and an is external property set to true. That data is available in the BSD. NLSFB has been published in the BSD, and it also says that that classification has two IFC properties connected to it, linked to it. The value of those properties needs to be. So we have that information in BSD. So if people need to classify their file according to NLSFB, they get those properties free as well. So it helps the users to further enrich it. But we can also, if you don't use the BSD, we'll check if that makes sense. So if you have an IFC wall with classification 2122, we can check if the properties is external and both load-bearing are being set to true. So we call this an information consistency check. So this is part of the validation. These two things are part of the validation service that we're currently developing. That's where Johan, I can't do that in French. The name is just too Dutch for me. You will do a workshop on that. You'll get a link on that as well in the staging environment where you can check that. So graphical user interface on this is not where it should be yet, but we're focusing on technical. There's a whole story on this. So originally, the validation service kind of grew up under the realm of the BSD, where we could do information checks in the BSD, and we kind of needed to do syntax and schema as well, because otherwise you can't do information check. But with recent discussions on software certification, driven by vendors and SEC, we're probably going to graduate the validation service into something that in the future would turn into software certification tooling as well. More on that later. The results of that validation service currently are being shown in a report. Ideally, in the future, that would be in BCF. The results from these validation tools that are not buildingSMART, I also assume and hope would be communicated in these or new BIM collaboration format. It's basically giving them topics that say something about IFC objects. And then you can share those errors to the author, maybe even through an OpenCDE or the VCF API. Questions here? I was really expecting questions on this software certification.
Sounds really interesting, but you say you're going to give a workshop later.
Yeah, validation service will be a workshop later, and we really have a lot of time on that, so I expect that the questions on software, we would have some time to...
Later today, tomorrow, or?
I think validation service is tomorrow.
Okay.
Is it tomorrow?
Tomorrow morning, I hope it's tomorrow.
Yeah, it's tomorrow morning.
So when you set category 21, 22 wall, it's still up to you to make sure that it's external and load bearing?
But when you use the VSD, we have examples. There's a very, very nice, actually, this demo, we have a movie as well on in SketchUp, where, so SketchUp has a plugin that when you search for, when you search in the NLSP, and you double click 21, 22, it adds the classification reference, but it also adds the properties and the value to the file. The idea is that it would help users to do that. So yeah, we hope, we expect software tools that support VSD for end users to implement that in their. It's not only adding the properties and the values, but also this references the URIs as well. Yeah, I don't want to talk yet about software certification of VSD plugins, but if there would be software certification of VSD plugins, that's the kind of things we would be checking.
There are Zoom questions.
There are Zoom questions. See those.
Stefan has asked if you could repeat, why does the VS not support IDS checks?
By the request of our stakeholders. We're not a software vendor.
A question from Stefan, am I missing validation against the chosen MVD? Is this something that BSI will offer?
Yeah, so we have a different policy on MVDs. So in the past, MVDs were basically separate standards that weren't necessarily interoperable with each other. As this example currently, for example, on IFC for precast, which has a geometry type that is not the same as, that is not available in reference view. So we have an MVD policy currently that says we have 3 base MVDs, 3 implementation levels of IFC, so reference view, alignment-based reference view, and transfer view. And we expect vendors to implement those levels for however they want. Not however they want, but as many as they want. And those will be checked in the validation service as well. So if you see MVDs as kind of performance levels of IFC, we have 3. Those will be included in software certifications. But MVDs, as I have this use case, and I completely refined what I need. I even tweaked IFC for it, and I changed how you should do the date time format and how you should do the geometry. And I want that checked. No, we're not going to do that anymore because we don't want to allow tweaking and fine-tuning of IFC anymore. Any other questions on? When was the break? 11, right? Or
10:30.
10:30. Okay.
And it does look like you have another Q&A. See the little thing on top? Q&A and that.
Oh, hang on.
I
There's just
see that on my
something.
screen.
Ralph is asking, at the current slide, validation of IFC data, there is probably a KO instead of OK at one error.
Yeah. No, yeah, I noticed that as well.
And can IDS requirements exceed the view definition? For example, an IDS requirement contains P-set specifications from structural and MEP elements.
Yes, it can. Yeah, so the original MVD requirements, again, those were very use case specific, where you said, for this use case, for precast, I always need these entities and properties as well, and I want certification to be sure that my software tool can support that. New certification is not doing those use cases parts anymore, at least not at the second level. We still want to support that, but different way. Yeah, this is going to be complex, right? I'll dive into the details tomorrow. But IDS does have the ability to support indeed multiple, basically define your own use case that is separate from some defined use case.
One quick question, going back to the lack of building-smart validation of the IDS. Is that open for review? Your stakeholders don't want you to do it, but IDS is a building-smart format, comes out to be correctly, and it's going to be very hard to talk to customers and say, well, validation works fine for the FTD data, syntax, and your implied model view definition, but the IDS component you're going to have to go.
Yeah,
seems a little bit short-sighted, in my view, in the way customers are perceiving.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of validation tools out there that all have their own customer base and their own functionalities and features. It's not up to us to compete with them. I think that's kind of the base principle. buildingSMART is a platform where a lot of different competitors come together to solve problems that they can't solve on their own. We're not a software developer, so
You're not developing a capital either.
Not developing a capital either, indeed. So the validation service is there, like I said, originally to help clients check their information consistency. Also, not exclusively. We also want to really hope that other people would create such tools as well. But for us, that's also is a more long-term strategy for software certification. So, validation of is this file correct was an explicit request from software vendors who were always in the discussion on, hey, this file doesn't work, it doesn't import. File is correct. No, the software implementation is correct. So there was an explicit request to create a validation service at buildingSMART as kind of the explicit answer to is the file correct or not? Because when it is, then the software implementation is wrong. So that was an explicit request. That's the reason why we made it. It was a long-standing request. But on the checking if my file is correct against the requirements is something that, we didn't have an explicit request yet from stakeholders, and we did have explicit statements that some of the vendors didn't want buildingSMART to develop something like that. So it's not written in stone. It is something that, within the community and with the Strategic Advisory Council, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
IDS is encoded in XSD, right? So
XML, yeah.
Well,
schema is an XSD.
Yeah.
IDS files are on XML.
Right. So, I guess there's a lot of open source tools that can do, some open source tools that can do XSD validation, right? And I guess it's a longer subject, but, that may be all that's needed, right?
You mean when you say IDS validation, checking the IDS file itself, or checking IDS with IFC?
Properties defined in the IDS file are on the objects in the IFC.
Yeah, okay.
Same way you're doing with BCSD.
Yeah, that is something that at the moment we got such a tool.
But again, I think there's stuff out there, right?
There might well be stuff out there. What I'm looking at as a software vendor is if you've got a customer who is complaining that the file won't go from our software to another vendor's or vice versa. It's very hard. It's a say-we-say argument. Whereas if we can go and say, well, actually, make it buildingSMART and run it through their validation program, helps the file conform with these consistent data, therefore.
So I didn't expect we would dive into these details so quickly, right? This is cool. So, like I said in the beginning, there's this balance between BSD and IDS. So, in principle, what you define in IDS, you can also publish in BSD. It's really much more a matter of agile fine-tuning in IDS for short-term transactions or more long-term specifying it in a more mature way. So, in that sense, the consistency check is very similar to an IDS check. And what we want to do here also is, for example, if an IFC file gets uploaded to the validation service and it checks against everything neatly and correctly, we can do a digital signature and say, well, this file is approved by buildingSMART, and it should be able to be used by other vendors. So those kind of ideas are currently on the table. Johan, who's developing this, doesn't know it yet, but I'll tell him later. And this is very close to what you probably want for IDS as well. But yeah, for IDS, it kind of feels like two difference. But yeah, again, still not carved in stone. Definitely on the table. You should probably do some lobbying with your competitors today. I mean, having said that, a personal comment, I don't think buildingSMART humanly is equipped to develop such a software tool in a very reliable way. So if you want us to do that, we would definitely need some more help as well.
Is there a SEMA?
Well, yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so
public and
yeah, so most of what I'm talking today is on our GitHub organization page. So if you go to github.com/buildingSMART/IDS, in this case, you would see the 0.9 version under the development. The XSD is there, a couple of example files, one IFC file. Do I need to open the chat as well then, or did we cover all of the questions? All right, so I hope the Miro board link has been shared, because this is completely unreadable. So if you take all of these different components and kind of put them in this matrix, so you have the different flows: validate, extend, author, and define requirements. You have the different services and standards at the top, so you can see where everything is positioned. This is quite a helpful overview to make sure what is where. But again, I'm aware that lots of this only raises new questions instead of answers. Questions up until here? All right.
Some questions
Yeah.
about Outer IFC. There's a diagram says you can provide a requirement for geometry. I'm curious for the format about geometry, type of geometry, or requirement.
In IDS, we don't have the ability to define geometrical requirements. We only have the ability to say, I need this kind of geometry. We can't specify how the geometry should look like.
Yes, it does. I'm curious for what outcome it will be, but yeah.
So you can say, I need a B-rep in here, and yeah, then the file needs to have, but there's no further ways to say, well, at least this kind of angles or whatever. That is what the SEN standard, level of information need, is trying to do. We try to focus on this first step first, and then the SEN working group is trying to figure out how you should do requirements for geometry, following that development and follow up on new versions. With this very bare minimum.
The things that are in progress, if we have any idea about the timelines when it will be available, I'm interested in the validation service.
The validation service is available for private testing. You have a form out if you want to test it. You can fill out your details, and then you get access. Since the validation service is now not only part of a feature of the BSDD, but part of the more direction for software certification, we're a little bit more careful about releasing it with some proper testing first. But in principle, for members and guys, we want to be open and available as possible. So, out to us, and if you can't wait until tomorrow, then Johan is right behind you. All right, any other? So, my next couple of slides are about current status of all of these developments. So, status of IFC 4.3 is we had a 4.3.0.0 released in March and sent to ISO. It's now in an ISO process that we don't control that much anymore. So it has been in a buildingSMART process up until March, and then kind of that development process continued, but it's under the control of ISO. Timelines there is a complete mystery, not only to us, but even to ISO itself. That has advantages and disadvantages. Come back to that later. The good part is that ISO review has really came up with a couple of things, like ordering of attributes that was fixed, ability. There's a couple of other tweaking and fine tuning as well that they found. So that's currently in that process. It also gives us, as an implementers forum or as an implementers group, the ability to also tweak and a couple of other things that we found in this space. So it's not exclusively ISO at the moment. You guys can also still have a major input on defining it before it becomes an official ISO standard. And say that again, because that's really the big topic of the rest of the day. You guys can also still fine-tune and before it becomes an official ISO standard. And the timeline on that, again, it has advantages and disadvantages. We're not really aware of how that would progress yet. There's an opportunity to still, that we thought were correct when we handed it over in March, but now during implementation we find that implement agreement or whatever. So what will happen? What would happen after that is that so we're currently we call it a IFC 4.3.0.1. That is where the ISO are being processed, and that's also where board inputs can be processed. When it then becomes an official ISO standard, it would be 4.3.0.1, and it have a new express schema, IFC 4x3 TC1. So, for some reason, I don't know the reason, I'm getting a lot of questions on this. So there won't be an updated 4x3, there will be a 4x3 TC1, and it would have a different schema as well. That would then also be the schema that's published by ISO, and that will be the schema of which we again, timelines are not vague, they are defined, but progress is a little bit vague. And that does give us an opportunity to fine-tune a couple of things. Right? So I think I've already mentioned the rest of the slide as well. Let me check. Yeah, so Order 3, again, has these 3 implementation levels: reference view, alignment-based reference view, and design transfer view. Those are also published as part of the documentation. So when you go to the last version of the documentation under Chapter 4, you would see a list of which parts of the concept template are part of alignment-based reference view and which are part of reference view. And again, those are also, they came from work that had been finished in March, and that was really a first stab at these base MVDs and implementation. And it's really also up to this implementers group, this IFC Autodesk implementers, fine-tune those and to tweak a little bit with those selections. The advantage we have there is also that it is in principle separated from the ISO timeline, so we can also publish the base MVD later, but I really don't want to do that. I really want to kind of lock down the MVD and implementation levels at the same time as the ISO standards. Otherwise, we have different versions of IFC, different versions of the MVDs, and want to be all over the place again. So yeah, a little bit of a sense of urgency as well. This is the group that now has the time and the ability to really nail it down and lock it in. We encourage you to activate.
I've got a quick question. I did raise it outside on the alignment-based reference view. Have a whole load of new spirals that could be defined for alignments, which are very geographically their use. For example, New South Wales cubic is only used in Australia. Doesn't make sense that for all the spirals, both in the horizontal and vertical transition curves, both horizontal and vertical, need to exist in vendor software in order to pass the alignment-based reference view definition. I'd like to make sure that common ones that use globally, like cubic, clockwise and arc spirals and parabolas in the vertical, are part of the base level. Slightly better one up, the next one up for rail.
Yeah, I think if I'm allowed to correct that statement a bit, we're not only interested in making sure that those are part of the base, but also that the other ones are not.
I don't think a vendor should be penalised that is, say, got a market in Europe, one country in Europe, and they have implemented their software in that country, and they can't get certified for IFC alignment-based reference view because they don't support 11 or whatever it is, 7 different spiral types.
Yeah. So this is a returning discussion. I think the short answer to that is I agree. So alignment-based reference view should be the interoperability level that is supported by everyone. And then you would have indeed additional extensions on top of that don't have to be. I'll do a presentation on the validation service and update on software certification tomorrow as well, or maybe today, depending on how it goes and how much time. Where you would also see that we're going to split up this base MVD, this base implementation level again into different functional parts, and under that you would have different tests again. So yeah, short answer again, the certifications on that base level should be something that everyone can support. But also stakeholders who really want to be 100% sure that there are software vendors who do support, what was the example? The Japanese high-speed curve.
Well, the New South Wales cubic.
Yeah, so the software certification setup that we want to do is also trying to give the ability for clients to say, I want only software that has proven to be able to export and import that specific part of the.
A question before you move on. Also, is 4.3 intended to, or even for buildings?
Mine supersedes.
In other words, is your view that ideally all IFCs produced in a year or two would be 4.3?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure if I'm the person who should answer that. It's a group, because we've been pressured quite a bit to say that reference view on IFC 4.3 is very similar to reference view on IFC 4, with the idea that vendors would then say, okay, if it's almost similar, then we are going to switch to 4.3. I kind of have the feeling that a lot of vendors got that message as, okay, then I don't have to switch to 4.3 if there's no real added value to that. So I'm not sure how to answer the question. So I think that in the infra domain, products that are operating in the infra domain would move also because of the entities and the classes and the properties. But offering tools in the building domain might want to wait out 4.3 until 5. I don't know. It's really, I think that are individual strategic decisions of the tools itself.
A lot of that has to do with we still see C2X3 files, right? Because of what people know.
Yeah.
Tends to have a broader support. It's a lot of people are used to still even doing those and not even IFC4. That's improving a bit now that there are more and more tools that have actually certified on IFC4, so there is that to look forward to. But I think it's going to be answered by.
Well,
Go ahead.
I don't want to.
I think we're going to end up in a situation where we're going to see IFC2X3, IFC4, and IFC 4.3 files floating around simultaneously. Because IFC2X3 is still considered an official supported standard.
Kind of opens a box of Pandora, I guess. Andres?
Yeah, box of Pandora, yeah. I would expect that there is a market opportunity for supported efficiency of, I don't know, 4.0, 4.1 files into 4.3.
Yeah.
An opportunity, because in the infrastructure, there's many situations where we do have the open model, like signaling and all this kind of thing, combined with the vertical BIM.
Yep.
They do, of course, expect that everything is 4.3. So if the vendors don't support 4.3 to vertical BIM, somebody has to move it to 4.3. I would expect.
It's like 4.3, like a superset of 4, can read 4.3, can read 4 as well.
The principle on reference view level
Yeah.
is very similar. There are some changes, but it's very similar. Yeah.
So basically, if you, in that case, basically, for people who support 4.3, able to read 4 as well. The vertical part in
I have already seen a couple of instances of newer companies that are going to provide the very tools that Andreas was talking about, where they're saying, give us whatever you got and we'll transform it into the other formats. Well, even more than yeah. But
We got some fingers raised as well. So.
I want to ask, so this numeration, is this mindset versioning in some sense? That is, what is granted about minor version, major version increase? Also in API, there is notion of versioning, and there are certain guarantees. Minor version, it basically don't change the API, so you can still work even with larger versions. Also, here's the question: is the software can understand version 4? Will it be able to understand 4.3? Just ignoring things.
Yeah, that's what indeed happens on reference to 4.3. Quite a lot of effort to check that it is backwards. Sorry, John was first. Yeah.
Well, this starts to dive deeper down the rabbit burrow, but coordination view, is that, I mean, when you research why IC 2x3 persists, for me, one of the reasons we still recommend it is for material layers and other attributes that aren't in reference view. So, but coordination view is extinct?
No, I'm not one of those persons that says 2x3 is so old, so we shouldn't use it anymore.
No.
It works perfect for certain use cases.
I guess my point is you've got reference view and design transfer view and coordination view sat in the middle. And for me, one of the reasons 2x3 persists is because of coordination view, which has a bit more semantics than reference view. So without going with design transfer view, as you said, is kind of on pause or not actively pursued at the moment. So I don't know. I just wonder personally whether we should publish coordination view for IFC 4.3, and that might help uptake of it.
That's a very interesting.
I don't know if anyone else has a comment on that, but
Let's discuss that over coffee.
Sure.
I want to move on. Dan.
There's a few questions in the chat. I don't know whether they've been addressed when I nipped out of the room. But I don't want to go too far because the topic will have already changed anyway. You know if they've been addressed or not? The first is from Ron. This is going back 10 minutes now though. Does this mean that 4x3.0.0 is going to be superseded by 4x3.0.1 and are there differences?
Yeah. So 4.3.0.0 is the buildingSMART version that is being kind of taken over by ISO. And the result of that ISO process will be 4.3.0.1, and that will be the final buildingSMART and ISO version, looking at you again, and the one that we do software certification.
Okay.
So again, this is the phase where we really need the final input from vendors, nail things down before the publication is final.
Maybe you can clarify, so when we came up with the logic for the numbering schema, what that represents. So the last numeral is essentially the TC version.
Yeah.
If there was a change in minor technical changes in the schema, like addendums, that would be the third number. So you'd see a revision number in the third. And then any major schema updates would be in the second number. So 3, 4, 5, whatever.
Do you want me to cover the other questions as well?
I can read them out, or you can
go
through.
I just read the one from Hanu. I think the answer, for the rest, the question is, if I export an IFC 4.3 file without alignments, should I use alignment-based reference view? I prefer to use reference view. So the answer obviously is yeah, you can use reference view if you don't have alignments or if you don't have any info or real specific things. You can just use. I would like to export IFC 4.3 over IFC 4 because I want export IFC bridge, etc. entities available. Yeah, that's exactly the reason why a lot of people will use reference view 4.3 instead of your reference view. Plus one for coordination view 4.3. Gold here. It's a really good idea. I totally agree with Nigel with the picky support of alignment-based reference view spirals. What's the view? I think I answered that. All right. So I was aiming for 10:30 coffee, but so I'll speed up from here. So IFC 4.4. The current status of that is it doesn't exist and there's no real active development. What we do have is a tunnel project that intends to contribute to IFC 4.4. So 4.4 is mainly a tunnel adding a couple of domains. The intention of that is also to become an ISO standard. But for 4.4 itself, we don't have timeline available at this moment. We want to focus on 4.3 first. There was something else I wanted to say as well. Yeah, there is a timeline on tunnel. So tunnel is kind of wrapping up stuff, I think, by the end of this year. The interesting thing is that the contributions from tunnel are also currently adding to kind of finalizing 4.3. So tunnel is a little bit in between a couple of versions at the moment, but they're big update. They're mainly their entities and a couple of the additional, we want to do something with 3D grids as well, a couple of other things. That will be quarter 4. But yeah, I just want to make clear, the timeline of the tunnel project is something else than the timeline of IFC. IFC 5, there's completely no timeline on that yet. Greg will do the workshop on that. There's been a lot of talks and a lot of discussions on that already. There's a paper, there's been a task force. There's really a massive amount of work already done. We had a big workshop in Zurich, whole day. You can't imagine. I think we didn't even have breaks anymore after lunch. Completely packed with very detailed technical presentations. I love it. So there's a lot there going on, but still very much on base principles. I think we seem to have found some kind of, consensus is not the right word, but some kind of a direction that would be supported by most vendors. Greg is going to talk about that after lunch. For lunch. For lunch? Oh yeah, after the coffee break. Oh.
Yeah, 11, Ossie and I.
Oh, that's fine.
Then Greg.
Perfect. So, software certification. As many of you have seen, we have, instead of the use case-based, MPD-based software certification, we added 2 other tracks as well. I don't want to call it levels. It's really separate tracks with validation service and kind of this intermediate base conformance level checks. You can read more about it on that link. Can I ask someone to share the link? And again, this new system for validation would probably graduate to something of software certification as well. Happy to dive into this more tomorrow when we show the system. So the current system, this is also something I need to explicitly state. The current system for this use case-based certification, which is basically the old MVDs, including the exchanges in the MVDs, still up and running at vCert. There's no configuration for 4.3 yet. Yeah, there needs to be a new business plan and commitment from stakeholders. The software certification also has a broader spectrum, again, where we have the D things, IDS, APIs. There's a lot of things that you can certify. Those are kind of written down on paper as possible things that we can do in the future, but are really low on the to-do list. IDS, then, it's 0.9 status at the moment. I think it's very well tested by multiple implementations. It has a clear scope, clear structure. I think it's currently being prepared to be sent to the standards committee for voting as a candidate standard, and you would find it on the GitHub repository. And I think, yeah, the big documentation update in progress is being created by Dion, who will also show that tomorrow.
He has confirmed, yeah.
So, BCF, I almost forgot to add a BCF slide in this presentation on status update. This is one of those development teams who is very mature, very eager, very professional, just progressing. I sometimes forget about them. They just work very hard in the background. There's a new update on BCF. It's kind of been split apart between the foundation API with user management, authorization, and the actual BCF part. That foundation part is also the foundation of the documents API, which we will get after. BSDD, we officially released the new BSDD about a year ago. It has a growing use from end users. It also has a surprisingly growing amount of domains and people who want to publish their data there. BSDD was always a little bit this catch-22, where you need to have enough data in there to attract users and software vendors to connect to it, but you need to have connections from software vendors for people to publish their data, I thought. But there's a lot of people who just want to publish their data there because they think it's the right thing to do and a good place to do. So I think we have about 80 domains in there now, which hopefully is getting a critical mass for software vendors to start the API as well. That was a bit of a surprise. The API is quite stable. We'll get an update on that from Eric tomorrow as well. There are some incremental updates here and there. I think last week we added a last updated timestamp. If we want to do caching, those really simply. The rest of the API is pretty stable. Support from you guys, from Software Tools, is really key at the moment. Comments, questions? The use case management service, one of those things that is rapidly progressing, but doesn't get as much marketing. It's up and running. It has a strong mission statement now. It really nails down what is it that we're here for, what is it that we're contributing, why are we doing this. The biggest challenge that they have now is to get it more integrated with the rest of the ecosystem. They're really hard working on supporting BSD and IDS at the moment. That's quite nice. And long term, this could also be a tool that integrates with use case-based software certification. This is what I need. This is I want software to check against that. So, last slide on the status updates. 10:30 exactly. Lots going on. Not enough to cover in 2 days, unfortunately. But we also have dinner thanks to Autodesk. So that's time. Again, I know that this probably costs more answers, so don't hesitate to just reach out. We have technical@buildingsmart.org. Reach out to me directly, to Evandro, during coffee breaks, lunch breaks. So, like I said, I think this is a period where, especially on IFC 4.3, this is really the time and place to get your inputs and your contributions. Any last questions or comments before we go to coffee? Talking? Yeah, everyone wants me to stop talking. Thanks, guys. Yeah, the better for the throat, yeah.